We're going to start off, and before we get started, let me familiarize you a little bit with the forum guidelines to show you know how this is going to work. And we have Judge Loca here, and he's going to make sure it all works this way. First thing is the forum will be held here. You're all already here, so you know that. Campaign signs are not allowed inside or outside the township hall. People can pick them up at their vehicles, at your vehicles, if you'd like, outside. No, you're all right. So if you got some signs and somebody may want some of those signs, just go over to Patrick's car or to Mr. Tater's car. Am I pronouncing that right, John? Tater. Thank you. Okay. Also, the forum moderator will be Judge Nicoloca, fine man that he is. The audience will be given opportunity to write down questions for the candidates. You have a card with a pencil in front of you right now. So if you got any questions in mind, and I hope you got a lot of them, okay, please write them on that card, and then we'll pass the card up, and I'll have somebody pick them up and give them to the judge, and he will have those questions answered for you. Now, we can't always answer all of them because we don't have the time, but I believe the candidates will be here for a little while afterwards. So if you have some questions that you have that you didn't get answered, talk to them. I'm sure they'll oblige you if they can. The forum, excuse me, each candidate will have 2 minutes for an opening statement to tell you about himself, 90 seconds to answer the questions, and 30 seconds for a rebuttal. If one candidate is named by another candidate, in a minute for a closing statement. He has a minute for a closing statement when we're all done. Candidates will rotate, taking turns being the first to answer the questions. Each candidate will answer the same question. Okay, this is not a debate. Due to time restraints, as I said earlier, all the questions from the audience may not get addressed, but perhaps you can stay after if you can think of something and talk to the candidate and ask him if he would try to answer that question for you. Do you have any questions on the forum? Judge, you got anything?
No applause.
No applause. Okay, you heard him. Okay, we also have a timekeeper. That's Carl here. And Carl's going to keep track of the time. Okay? So without that now, we'd like to start the same way. Hi, how you doing? Good to see you. The same way you always start, with an opening prayer. And Carl, can you please, Carl, God, gone already. Carol, okay, can you handle that for us? Can everybody stand that can, please? So we do this.
Thank you. First of all, I'd like to read a portion of the Declaration of Independence. We hold these two truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. And now I'll say the prayer. Father, thank you for the precious rights you have given to all men. Thank you for giving our founders wisdom in penning our Declaration of Independence and U.S. Constitution. Though former government leaders were in violation of trampling upon these documents, I believe our President Donald Trump truly loves America and our founding documents. He is leading us in a positive direction that is bringing and keeping America in line with the important words and definitions in these documents. We welcome your Holy Spirit here to guide us in peace and purpose tonight. In the name of Jesus, amen. And if our veterans would please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty, and justice for all. You may be seated. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. So I'd like to introduce, first of all, let me tell you about the membership cards. You'll notice there's 2 sign-in sheets up there. One of them has places for your email address or your name and phone number and address so that we can send you a membership card if you'd like to be a member of the Tea Party. So that's what that's there for. The other one is just for being here tonight, and we appreciate you all signing in. We'll pass the membership one around. If you want to be a member and you want to get a card, just sign that and fill it out. Okay, now carrying on. I want to introduce the people we have, the candidates here. Both candidates are running for governor of the state of Michigan, and we want to welcome them both here. We have Patrick Colbeck and John Tater. Okay, let's get a hand for those. We can have a hand right now. Thank you. Okay. First of all, they are going to tell you about themselves here, but let me just say, we'll start with Senator Colbeck. Senator Colbeck lives in Redford. Is that her? Close? You live in Redford, right? Sorry. Don't live there, does he? Okay. Yeah. All right. And he's going to have 2 minutes to set up and tell you all about himself and what his thoughts are and that kind of stuff. And again, you got to be writing down questions there, people. If you have questions, we got to give them to the judge here, and he's going to ask the questions. So first of all, let me introduce Patrick Colbeck, please. He's running for governor.
Hey, thank you very much. It's good to be here. Thank you for coming out, and I really appreciate seeing everybody. My background's a little bit different from folks running for public office. It's actually, I got about 2 decades of private sector experience, coupled with 2 terms in the Michigan Senate. In the private sector, I'm actually an engineer, aerospace engineer. I got a bachelor's and master's degree in aerospace engineering from the University of Michigan, and went on to work on the International Space Station for Boeing and for Lockheed. So folks flying around in space there, they're living and breathing in a life support system I helped design, and it's still working, so that's a good news thing. I used to teach out at Space Camp as well as the opening act for one of Dr. Werner von Braun's real rocket scientists. I also used to work for the Department of Defense as a systems engineer, working on virtual reality training systems for the military. Learned appreciation and affinity for the military during that time. Worked for the best darn leader I ever worked for in my life by the name of Major Chuck Peabody. And I really developed an appreciation for that. It led me founding an organization called the Freedom Center out at Detroit Metro Airport and our military entrance processing station. One of the first things that I did before it didn't require a bill, just said, here's a need. We're going to go off and serve those who serve us. Went on to work as a management consultant, which is essentially a turnaround specialist. That's what I've been trying to do here in the Michigan State government for a while. I've served as a small business owner actually for 6 years as a management consultant. Doing that, you don't last that long unless you're providing value. Now, up in the Michigan Senate, this is something that the old idea of running for office was not something that was something my wife and I were entertaining for quite a long time. Engineers aren't known for getting up and talking on microphones and getting in front of TV cameras. But we were concerned about the direction of our country and the direction of our state. A lot of my family had been moving out of state, and I thought it was about time that we changed that. So we actually liquidated all of our retirement savings to actually go off and run for office the first time. So if you see that I serve a little bit differently than the rest of the folks up there and serve with principle, there's a reason. I know who I'm serving. It's not the folks up in Lansing. It's the folks right here in this audience. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Colbeck. And now I'd like to introduce Mr. Tater. He's running for governor also on the Libertarian ticket. He lives in Redford. Okay. Let's welcome John, please.
Thank you very much and for giving me the opportunity to come and speak with you today. My background is varied. I taught school for 31 years in the city of Livonia. I taught kids how to build houses. We built 15 homes in the city of Livonia with high school students, from the very bottom base property all the way up to the final sale of the house. They did all the work, plumbing, heating, electrical, and so on and so forth. During that same time period approximately, I had a construction company, and I ran a construction company since 1984 and built private homes and what we call group homes. I don't know how many are familiar with those, but I built several of those in the past. Happened to be owner of a few of them. Outside of that, I'm a retired lieutenant colonel from the Army Reserves. I served for 31 years in the military. I was activated to Desert Storm. My background in the military was Medical Service Corps, where I was basically in command positions. And when I wasn't in command positions, I was on the platform discussing or teaching people different things, soldiers different things. A lot of the times I would be teaching doctors how to wear their uniform, actually, because they had no clue. They got the commission, and they walked in and said, they brought me their brass, and they said, where do I put this? So that was the kind of thing I was doing. I have two children. I have one son that is a major now in the Air Force. He's at Dayton, Ohio, and he's going to soon be a colonel. He's up on the board for promotion. And my daughter is a PhD, and she teaches at U of M. No, Michigan State. I keep getting those two screwed up. Michigan State, she teaches doctors anatomy. I don't know where she got that from. It wasn't from me, but nonetheless. I'm running for governor because I'm really fed up with the system. I've been doing this for years, living as a citizen in Michigan. I've lived here all my life, and all I see is a bunch of nonsense. So my time's up. Thank you.
Give him a hand, please. Thank you. Thank you, John. Very good.
Thank you very much, ladies and okay, there you go. Thank you very much, gentlemen. I'm going to be asking the questions, and again, we're going to alternate who goes first, and we have the timekeeper there in front, and quite a few of these questions are duplicates. I'll try to combine them if necessary, and we'll start with Senator Colbeck in alphabetical order. First question to you, Senator, will you work to remove the Common Core curriculum from our schools?
Absolutely, and I already have. I introduced Senate Bill 826, which would have fully repealed the Common Core standards and replaced it with the pre-Common Core Massachusetts standards. It got stopped on the Senate floor, and I'll point out there's a reason why I wrote the book Wrestling Gators, Outsider's Guide to Drain the Swamp. It's because I've run into a few swamp monsters up in Lansing, and one of them stopped the passage of my Common Core repeal bill. Matter of fact, I'm the only returning senator that did not receive any chairmanships. And I don't know if you guys know why that's the case, but when I sat down with the Senate Majority Leader and asked him, why? Because I actually had an exemplary record as budget chair for State Police and Department of Military and Veterans Affairs. We turned around veteran services from one of the worst in the country to number 2 in the nation under my guidance. And he said, number 1, you were too vocal in your opposition to the expansion of Obamacare in the state of Michigan. By the way, this is a Republican Senate Majority Leader. Number 2, you were too vocal in your opposition to Common Core standards. So yes, I want to get rid of these stupid little standards. They've been an experiment on our kids, and they've been a failed experiment on our kids. And frankly, the whole idea of going off and pushing this from the beginning has been a money grab since the beginning. It needs to be stopped. So absolutely, we'll get rid of Common Core and actually understand how to actually do that.
Mr. Tater, same question, please. No applause while they're doing these things.
I don't know where they ever developed Common Core or why they ever developed Common Core. I have an idea, but that's not how children learn. I've taught kids for 31 years, and I've realized that students learn because they want to learn, because they're motivated to learn, because they have a direction in life to learn. They don't learn because Washington, D.C. presses them and tells them that they have to do something and learn something in a particular way. Same with the state of Michigan. Education should be at the local levels where parents are involved and parents run the system. Parents are the backbone of the education of the children. They, of course, want the best for their children, and they know what their children should be learning. This thing about the further it gets away from our hands, the worse it becomes. And so, yes, Common Core is something I want to totally get rid of. I've realized that when kids, because I taught English, I taught social studies, I taught industrial arts, American history and government also, and while I was teaching those classes, some of the kids can't handle or do not want to deal with paper, pencil, and they don't want to learn that. But you give them a hammer, and they're really good at it. And I had kids coming over on Christmas vacation and Easter vacation to work on that house because they were dedicated to do that. That's the way to teach a child, to get him motivated and dedicated.
Thank you. Mr. Tater, next question to you. This question is, what is your position in regards to pipeline number 5? That is the pipeline under the Straits of Mackinac carrying oil. What is your position in regards to maintaining it, eliminating it? What would be your position, please?
If there was any reason to maintain it, and I mean any reason to maintain it, and I don't believe there is, but if there is any reason to maintain it, the oil company that operates that pipeline needs to take out enough insurance that if that pipeline breaches in any way, that insurance, that they will be covered for the cleanup. The problem we've had over the years is the chemical companies in Michigan, the oil companies are polluting our streams, and they're turning around to the people to pay for it out of our pockets. They did the damage. They need to repair the damage. So either we make it very difficult for them so they maintain that pipeline at all times, or they're going to have a serious insurance bill in order to do so. As far as do we get rid of it, I think we should get rid of it. I think it's a loop that Canada, it's really not for us. It's not based, we're not getting the benefit out of that oil. The oil is going elsewhere. So, but we're getting our straits screwed up by if that oil pipeline breaches.
Thank you. Same question, Mr. Colbeck.
First of all, the oil's processed in Sarnia, but it comes back here to the state. So the first thing you need to recognize is if you want to transport fluids from point A to point B, what's the most reliable way of going off and doing that? Because we don't want any harm to our Great Lakes. We all appreciate our Great Lakes. Well, as an engineer, I've done a lot of failure modes and effects analyses, a lot of reliability analyses, and I can tell you the most reliable part of any plumbing system, and that's what I did. I was an advanced plumber on space station. I did the oxygen-nitrogen system. The most reliable part of that system is the pipeline and the pipes. And so I believe that we should be, if we're going to distribute that fluid from point A to point B, the pipeline is the best way to go off and do it. You got to make sure it's maintained, obviously, and there's some evidence to say that some areas of it have not been maintained. Well, go off and get the company to go off and maintain it. If they don't maintain it, then you shut them down. But the idea, some people are saying just because the pipeline is an old pipeline means you need to shut it down. I'm sorry, but they used to build things a heck of a lot better back then than they do now. You can see that with some of the roads that we have. If you go out to Busha Highway, for example, it's 52 years old, and that highway's in better condition than some segments of newly paved I-696. So just because it's old doesn't make it bad. And there's a lot less reliable ways of transporting fluids like freighters, like rail lines. When they spill, bad things happen. Pipeline spills are very rare compared to accidents. So,
thank you. Next question to you, Senator Colbeck. Gerrymandering. It's going to be on the ballot this election cycle. What's your position in regards to the proposal?
Well, the gerrymandering initiative is not about gerrymandering. It's about the Democrats trying to take over our election process. So, and if you don't believe me, believe the person who actually is spurring on this movement, or the so-called Voters Not Politicians movement. I think her name is Katie Fahey. She was on WDIV with Devin Scillian. And he asked him, why are you pursuing this? And you know what she said? Because we're not getting the election results we want. So who's gerrymandering what? I'll tell you, all the creative lines that are out there, they're all done in accordance with statutory requirements and constitutional requirements. Most of those statutes that drove those little squiggly lines that are out there look like salamanders. The Democrats are the ones driving that. Now they want to go off and focus on one election. That's Secretary of State with Jocelyn Benson. They want to take it over and then control how we actually define our lines. I'm telling you, this is nothing but an attempt to take over. You'll see all the different voter initiatives or voting initiatives that the Democrats are pushing onto this ballot this year. There's one that if you go off and talk to the petition signature gatherers, they say it's all about making sure that the veterans get their vote. Read the fine print. If you actually go into it, they want same-day voter registration, and they want no reason absentee voting. Bad news, folks. They're trying to take over our election process, and this is one example of it. Vote no on voters, not politicians. It's gerrymandering itself.
Mr. Tater?
Gerrymandering has been an issue in the state of Michigan for a long time, and the squiggly lines that at one point went to court because they were picking spots. They had a little part here and a little part here and a little part here, and they called that one of the districts. And then the court said, well, it'd have to be one continuous line. But that continuous line carries in some very strange directions. I did run in the 11th district, and it started in Livonia, and it went up to White Lake, and it went over to Troy, and it went down a little bit. Those particular reasons, and the reason that they have this system of gerrymandering is those that are in power set the limits. I have a real issue with those in power setting limits. Somehow there's got to be a more equitable way of running an election where everybody has an opportunity, because we live in a republic. And in a republic, we are in charge, not the people in Lansing, not the legislature, not the governor, but the people, we, the people. So we should be able to get our voice heard in whatever direction we can. So I'm not sure that their system that they're going for is a good system, but what we have presently is not good either.
Thank you. Next question to you, Mr. Tater. What is your plan how to fix and maintain our roads?
The problem with the road business is that they've been collecting money since the 80s, because I did run once upon a time against a House of Representatives person who wanted a 10-cent gas tax. They got the 10-cent gas tax, and they've been continually accumulating money over time. So what happened to all of that money that they've been accumulating over time? That's the first question. The second question is, when they maintain the roads, who do they hire to maintain the roads, to fix the roads? And what kind of materials do they use? You know that if they don't use good quality material, that will be a problem. I'm for bringing hemp back into the agricultural system and using hemp as some of the products, perhaps for building roads, along with some of the other products that we have out there that'll help build the road. Now, the thing is that the infrastructure and the roads are part of our government. That's the house that they're supposed to be preparing or maintaining. When you own a house, you maintain the house so it doesn't fall down around your ears. The state legislature, the governor, for years have been putting that aside and just doing the patchwork here and there to hopefully get over the next election. Kick the can down the road. We have to stop that. We have to get to a point where we can start repairing and maintaining these structures.
Thank you. Senator?
Two facets to this, short-term, long-term. Let's look at the short-term funding, or short-term fixes. So everybody's seen the coal patch trucks, right? I call it throw and roll. Do you realize there's better techniques that actually can last, instead of 2 to 3 weeks with the coal patch, it can last 2 to 3 years? It's systems called DuraPatch, PatchMaster, Jet Patch, that kind of stuff. They use it everywhere except for in Michigan, it seems, although I have seen some evidence in Oakland County at times. So we need to go off and adopt better patch techniques. So before we actually can do the full reconstruction, let's fix them right and fix them so that they last. The long term, a lot of people are trying to make the case that it's about money. It's not about money. I'm telling you, when the voters voted, 81% of them said no to the proposal 1 back in 2015. By the way, I was leading the charge on that, making sure everybody was informed that only $400 million of that $1.7 billion actually went to roads, which, by the way, is not a way to win a popularity contest in Lansing. But it was true. And then as soon as the voters rejected it with 81%, they came back 2 months later and proposed another tax increase without a vote of the people. I objected to that, and I challenged all my colleagues to a public debate if they thought that we need to increase taxes to fix the roads. You know what? Right after they passed that, without my support, they repurposed $400 million in general fund revenue from transportation, put it to Medicaid expansion. It was never about the roads. It's a bait and switch. You got to focus on higher quality roads in the long term. If you do that, your total maintenance costs go down, not up.
Thank you. Senator, next question to you. What's your view on the current process of taxing senior pensions, retirement pensions?
I'm opposed, and at the time it was being proposed, I actually proposed $700 million worth of expense reductions as an alternative, and I sent that letter to the Senate Majority Leader and the Appropriations Chair, Roger Kahn, and they obviously did not support that approach. But I've got a plan going forward as governor on how to actually eliminate the state personal income tax altogether, and the senior pension tax goes bye-bye along with it, and there's no debate over whether or not the 401k should be taxed or not either, because they won't be taxed either. So the fairness argument goes out at the door as well. This is also for economic development purposes, because a lot of the small businesses are pass-through entities, so if you actually eliminate the state personal income tax, now you got a 4.25% bump for all the small businesses in the state. So this is a big deal. Elimination of state personal income tax is something that is doable. We don't need a replacement tax. The folks at Michigan Fair Tax Association have actually endorsed my plan, and they always talk about needing a replacement tax. They actually looked at my numbers, went through the spreadsheet, which I often say I have a spreadsheet and I'm not afraid to use it as an engineer. And going through that, we demonstrated we can indeed go off and eliminate the state personal income tax altogether. That's one way of bringing back all of our expatriates from Michigan during the lost decade, bringing them back home, because I think it's a really important way to get people back to Michigan. So let's get rid of that stupid income tax, shall we?
Mr. Tater?
The thing about Michigan is that we've been overtaxed, while the state of Michigan has underproduced whatever they were supposed to be doing for us. The problem is that they do, as Mr. Colbeck speaks, shell games with us. They get a big chunk of money and then they spend it. I've been harping about getting rid of the income tax, and I definitely think that we as retirees have spent 60 years of our life or 65 years of our life supporting Lansing. It's time for that to stop. So that tax would go away also. I'd like to see the gas tax that they just instituted also reduced or eliminated or brought back to the original level. The problem is that when they get a big pool of money, they spend it on nonsense and things that don't reflect us. I'm going to give you an example. It's the Senate office building that they just purchased. Paid $41 million for a building that was appraised for $12 million by the Lansing appraiser. Somebody made $29 million on that deal. Those kind of deals are going on behind closed doors in Lansing constantly. And the problem is that we don't have a very transparent government in Lansing. You can't get FOIA requests. They make it very difficult, and they redact half of the FOIA stuff. So we got to go back to where they understand that they work for us, and they're afraid of us.
Mr. Tater, next question for you. Do you support the legalization of marijuana? And the follow-up, how would you deal with the opioid crisis here in Michigan?
I'd like to say that marijuana is a term that was brought in the 40s. That term was brought by the textile, oil companies, pharmaceutical company, because they didn't want hemp as a product that they'd have an issue with, that they would have competition with. So they did everything they could to eliminate hemp, but they couldn't say to the people, we want you to stop using cannabis. So they went and they picked up a Mexican term called marijuana, and they made a big boogeyman out of that. If you go on the website and look up the history of that, you will see that that story has been driven to the American people to make us particularly afraid or think that marijuana is such a bad thing, when they've been using hemp and cannabis up to the 40s on a regular basis. We have endocannabinoids in our system that will accept the ingredients from CBD oils and stuff from hemp. Hemp can be used for 100,000 different things. I mean, clothing and building and wood products and ropes and so on and so forth. We need to bring hemp back as a major industrial or agricultural crop to Michigan. And the other part of that question was...
How would you deal with the opioid crisis?
There's a lot of people that are in pain. I'm sorry, I'm going to give you a second here. There's a lot of people that are in pain that have to have something for that pain. So, and a lot of people can use marijuana or...
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Mr. Colbeck, again, the question, do you support the marijuana initiative or the proposal on the ballot, and how would you deal with the opioid crisis?
All right, let's start with the People's Initiative that was passed a few years back where they allowed for 2.5 ounces of personal use and 12 plants to grow. I was okay with that. It was limited. They decided that they wanted to put that on steroids, pardon the expression, with the legislation in the Michigan Senate. I opposed that legislation because, frankly, it was being bought. And there's a lot of money changing hands. I've never seen more money being thrust into pushing legislation and trying to get people to vote a certain way, including many organizations that were endorsing this legislation, and I opposed it, and it stunk to high heaven, frankly. Well, this recreational marijuana list is or use is exactly what I predicted at the time of this. They were just trying to lay in the plumbing infrastructure for full recreational use. And a lot of people are jockeying for position on who owns that market right now, and a lot of money is being passed around. I oppose the recreational marijuana initiative on many different points. But one of the points is that I got 31,000 job openings in my district right now, and a lot of people require drug tests in order to pass, in order to get employment. That number is going to go up under recreational marijuana, of the number of openings that we have, because we're not going to find qualified people, and we're going to have a lot more people on government assistance. That is not a good policy to have. I'm not even going to get into the driving under the influence of marijuana. Today, the THC level of marijuana that they have that's out there in different strains, it is a very high concentration. It's not the 60s level marijuana, and it is very detrimental. And since you took some extra time on the opioid abuse, I'll highlight what's going on with that as well. There's some legislation that they're pushing forward on trying to stem opioid abuse here in the state of Michigan. I oppose most of that legislation that dealt with interfering with the doctor-patient relationship. There are some people that need opioids. The way to go off and address the abuse is by doing data mining on something called the MAP system, which is it's controlled at the pharmacy level. You control it at the point of distribution.
Thank you. Hopefully, again, you can ask the follow-up questions later on. We got to try to keep this moving as much as possible. Mr. Colbeck, Senator, next question to you. Michigan has some of the most, or the most expensive auto insurance in the nation. What is your proposal in regards to get some relief, if necessary, or if possible?
It is very possible, and the debate kind of zeroes in on two basic issues. The folks that want to lower the cost of auto insurance, and then the folks that want to retain lifetime benefits. So if you've been injured in an auto accident, lifetime benefits is pretty important. You have a traumatic brain injury, I mean, you need that help. And $250,000, so some people are proposing to cap it at, just will not last you more than 3 to 6 months. So what I've done is take an engineering approach. I said these are two requirements: lower the cost, retain lifetime benefits. And I identified a solution that will actually work in that. It turns out when I look at my own insurance premiums, 58% of the costs are associated with state mandates. You eliminate the state mandates, you can lower the cost. That doesn't, and the second part is how do you retain the lifetime benefits if you get rid of the mandates? Well, there's this something called the Michigan Catastrophic Fund. It's got an over $22 billion corpus associated with it. Depending on, and if you actually retain the control over how the interest on the payments on that corpus, so $22 billion, right now it's earning about $369 million a year just in interest. That doesn't go towards any benefits. It just goes to increase the benefit on it. If you can squeeze your lifetime benefits into that 369, you can actually zero out all the additional costs associated with the Michigan catastrophic surcharge. It's not an easy haul, but it's something that's possible, and it's something I will be pursuing as governor.
Thank you. Mr. Tater, same question. Auto insurance rates?
The auto insurance process that we have in Michigan, the no-fault process, makes a monopoly out of the insurance companies, where you have to have insurance one way or the other. We need to get rid of the no-fault policy. A no-fault policy wasn't written for the people. It was written by the insurance companies. So first of all, we have to get rid of no-fault, and second of all, we have to open the industry of insurance to nationwide, have more competition in the insurance industry, and that'll bring the costs down, because we know when we have that type of competition, prices will be reduced. As far as the catastrophic and so on and so forth, the thing with the state of Michigan is that the insurance company is only required to pay up to $525,000 of a catastrophic claim, and the state of Michigan picks up the balance. So if we're paying the insurance companies high premiums, they should be covering the entire cost. That could eliminate the catastrophic fund claims. The thing is that this was not set up for the people and not set up for the benefit of the people.
Thank you. Mr. Tater, next question to you. What is your position on having a part-time legislature here in Michigan?
I love it.
Quick answer, I like it.
I'll expound upon it just a bit. The Senate, for example, has no constitutional duties in the state constitution. You know, when you have a job, you have a constitutional duty to perform certain things. They represent the people. The Senate represents the people, and the House of Representatives represent the people, and therefore we're paying two different parts of government to do the same job. We could eliminate the Senate, could eliminate the purchase of the Senate office building. We could then go to a part-time legislature, which we had in the past, years ago, and it operated fine. And the problem with the House of Representatives on a full-time basis, when they're on a full-time basis and we have to pay for their office space, we have to pay for their time that they're actually not on duty, they're getting $72,000 a year, and they're on what's the time period that they're actually doing work in the legislature? It doesn't compute.
Senator?
Yep, I support part-time legislature, although I think he has a misunderstanding of what a legislature does, but we've got a lot of, I'm working nonstop across the board here. This is not easy stuff. You're not just, it's just not when you're in session that you actually are representing the people. You're representing the people all the time. And those phones are always ringing off the hook. One thing about this part-time legislature proposal that came up recently, though, is incomplete. If you go off and, as a gubernatorial candidate, go off and propose, I want a part-time legislature, well, guess what happens if you dilute the power or the voice of the legislature? Guess who gets that power unless you make any other changes? It's the executive branch. That's kind of self-serving as a governor candidate, right? So I actually got a proposal called Senate Joint Resolution M that actually reins in the executive branch as well. Just in case you guys are wondering where I'm coming from, it's not a power grab on my part. I want our system of government to work effectively. And what I do is rein in and give the legislature additional authority over executive rulemaking. I provide additional transparency on how budgets are developed and how they're approved. That's the way we need to do it. As an engineer, I want to make sure we have a finely tuned engine. We got three branches. They're all supposed to be working in concert with one another. And so you can't just do the part-time legislature without reining in the executive branch as well. So there's a lot of stuff that goes into that.
Thank you. Next question to you, Senator. Do you know what your rating is with the NRA, and what's your position on the Second Amendment?
Just got it in today, and I got an A. And the only thing that would keep me from A+ is having better PR. But I've been one of the most outspoken defenders of the Second Amendment on the airwaves, going off and talking in environments where they're sitting there trying to control our guns and take them away from us. There's a lot of people talking about school safety. I've been on the forefront of making sure people understand there's two ways of protecting our kids out in the schools. One is to put a piece of paper up there and say, hey, don't take a gun in here if you want to go off and shoot our kids. How effective is that going to be, right? Not effective at all. The other is to let people that are responsible, let the good guy with the gun be there so when the bad guy with a gun comes in there, somebody's there to oppose them. And the fact is 98.7% of the mass shootings occur in gun-free zones. We need to eliminate gun-free zones. I want to make Michigan a constitutional carry state and actually get rid of all this permit tracking. We shouldn't need a registration to go off and do that. We'll do background checks, make sure we're not giving it to felons, right? So that especially ones that are convicted of armed robberies. But we need to make sure that we start respecting that Second Amendment. And Michigan Constitution is pretty clear, too. Article 1, Section 6 is we have the right to bear arms in self-defense. Two ways of keeping us all safe. One is trying to do a top-down authoritarian control. The other is a bottoms-up, respect individual liberties. I'm on the side of the individual liberties.
Thank you, Mr. Tater. What do you have a rating with the NRA, and if so, what is your position on the Second Amendment, please?
Up to now, I don't know what the rating would be because they have not generally supported libertarians in the past, so I can't really address that. However, I was a competition shooter since high school. I shot in the high school ROTC program and was top 10 in the city shooting rifles. And I went to the military and I shot for 10 years, M14 rifle in competition, Camp Perry, Ohio, and so on and so forth, and pistol also. So I'm a very strong supporter of the Second Amendment. And more than that, it's a God-given right that we have a right to protect ourselves. The Second Amendment is just government's hands-off, or the laws that are supposed to keep government from addressing or taking those rights away. However, those rights don't come from the government, they come from God. And so.
Thank you. Mr. Tater, next question to you, sir. Do you believe in subsidized electricity?
I don't even know where to go with that.
I don't write them, I only ask them.
I don't even know where to go with that. I believe that we need a lot more competition, that we need to take the monopoly away from DTE, because DTE, once they become a monopoly, and the MPSC, which is useless, they don't do what the people want, they do what they want and what the power companies want. So I want to see more competition with the DTE, and we know that they were buying our school systems, some of the school systems were buying electricity from Ohio and some of the other places, and their rates were a lot lower. DTE got involved and tried to change that, and I don't know if they did. I think they got away with changing that process. So we need competition in the state of Michigan for electricity, and we need competition for gas. I'm talking about natural gas for heating homes, which will bring the cost of that down. Do I got a second left? I've been involved in the smart meter issue since 2013, and I even developed the lock. You can go on the internet and type my name in, the old Tater lock will pop up to keep DTE from swapping the meters out. That's been since destroyed by DTE because now they shut you off at the pole. But we were making an effort to try to stop that nonsense.
Thank you. Senator, your position on subsidized electricity, competition?
Yeah, first of all, people from all over the state come into my office because I actually do represent the people before the MPSC and hold our utilities accountable, particularly in the smart meter issue. But in general, on the subsidies, not just in general, but overall, no, we shouldn't be subsidizing them. In Michigan, we have 90% of our market is governed by regulated utilities. That means DTE or consumers, essentially. 10% is alternative energy market that John was referring to, where people can buy things off market, and they tend to get 10 to 20% less on their electricity rates that way. I believe we should be 100% electric choice so that everybody can get 10 to 20% off on their electricity. Now, the reason that the utilities push for these subsidies is because they say they're trying to make the grid more reliable. There is something to having a base power load to prevent brownouts, but there's a lot of different ways of going off and approaching that. And I'm telling you what right now, the way this is set up inside of Michigan, the market is set up, our regulated utilities could sell 0 kilowatt hours and still make money, because what they do is, because of things like these subsidies, they'll get a 10.3% return on equity for every capital investment that they make. All right, so every smart meter that they install, 10.3%. Every power plant, 10.3%. It is a racket. And ever wonder why a utility company actually has to advertise on TV when they have a virtual monopoly? It's so that they don't get any bad press.
Thank you. Next question to you, Senator. What role does God, Jesus, or the Holy Spirit play in your life, and how would that affect you, or what role would that play if you became governor?
It affects everything. If I talk about principles, well, those principles are firmly founded on Judeo-Christian principles in the Bible. Every morning I'm in the Bible. Matter of fact, when I decided to run for office, it was based on me being in prayer. this is not something an engineer likes to go off and do, is run for office. Immediately when you run for office, 50% of your people that used to call you friend and family members, hate your guts. It's just not fun. So why would somebody do that? Well, I talk about it a lot in my book, Wrestling Gators. When I decided to finally run for office, my wife and I were in prayer, and I actually gave God a deadline. And that deadline was February 21st, 2010. My devotion for that morning was from 1 Corinthians 9:24, which reads, "For many run in the race, but only one gets the prize. Run in such a way as to get the prize." And my wife and I both went, phew. So if you want to know why we liquidate our retirement savings, we felt called to go off and do this. And you know what? God's never let us down all along the way. Right when we started running, I went off, and when we announced we were going to run, instead of going out to the press and saying, "Look at me, I'm a really good guy, vote for me," I went off to serve on a Vita Cristo weekend as a head chapel chow and pray. I came back that Monday. The front runner on the Republican ticket dropped out of the race. Same thing happened on the Democratic side. Front runner on a Democrat right before finally deadline dropped out of the race. I'm telling you guys, there is a difference. And when I talked to the media about what my secret was for winning that first election, just like it's going to be in this election, I said, where God guides, He provides.
Thank you. Mr. Tater, same question, please.
I guess I got to say God's going to have a tough decision as to who to pick for governor here. I suspect he can. But yes, I have the same basic background as Senator Colbeck has. I also follow along in prayer and go through those processes myself. And I'm doing the next most honorable thing that I could do, and that's run for governor to try to make a change in this state. Because what I've seen coming down the pike and what I've seen over the years during my lifetime in this state is deplorable. The state of Michigan is going down the drain at breakneck speed. We lost our industry. Our education is in shambles at this point. Roads and infrastructure, we don't even need to go there because you know. We have all of these problems going on, and they're playing shell games with us in Lansing. So, and they're hiding the truth from us. So I believe that, I took this calling on myself to get into that position where I can make a difference. I'm fighting every day in the court systems or whatever as a private individual, but I'm not getting as far as I could get if I got into the governorship.
Thank you. Next question to you, Mr. Tater. With dealing with the immigration issues that are facing this country, what's your position on that, and in particular having sanctuary cities here in the state of Michigan?
I'm against sanctuary cities. I believe that according to the Constitution, if we are a nation of law, then we must follow some sort of law. I'm really happy that I don't know who read the Declaration of Independence, but I was saying, yeah, that's the greatest thing right there. We have those documents for us to follow. And in the federal Constitution, the president is responsible for immigration and taking care of our borders, not the state of Michigan. The state of Michigan shouldn't be fighting that issue and creating sanctuary cities against what the president is doing.
Senator?
That Declaration of Independence says that the purpose of government is to secure the rights of the governed. Immigration policy is a major part of securing those rights. And I've been diehard in opposition to sanctuary cities, and I think everybody needs to understand one of the Democratic gubernatorial candidates, Abdul El-Sayed, wants to make Michigan a sanctuary state. And I wanted to make sure we pointed that out to people. And not only that, but he's actually affiliated with an organization that is responsible for something called civilization jihad. If you don't know what that is, Dr. Abdul Sayed is a former member or vice president of Muslim Students Association. The creed for that organization states, Allahu Akbar, jihad is my spirit, I will die to establish Islam. The Muslim Students Association was formed by the Muslim Brotherhood in 1963. It has been identified as a terrorist organization by majority Muslim countries such as Egypt, Saudi Arabia, UAE. When I pointed out these affiliations and the association with a terrorist organization, I was called every dirty name in the book, and I'm telling you the truth. It's not about religion, it's not about race, It's about an affiliation with a terrorist organization. And when I brought that up in front of 150 members of Michigan Press Association, Abdul al-Sayed told me point blank on the stage with all the other gubernatorial candidates, you may not hate Muslims, but Muslims definitely hate you. How many of you guys have seen that in any headlines? If I would have said that from a Christian perspective, what do you think would have been said? I'm telling you, fake news is real.
Thank you. Next question to you, Senator Colbeck. If you become governor on January 1st, 2019, what are your 2 top priorities?
Top priority, number 1, is eliminate state personal income tax. And because of all the steps that are necessary to implement that, you've got to make that a consistent priority, and you've got to keep your eye on the ball to make that happen. It's not just flipping a light switch. There's a series of milestones that have to come in play. The other part is to simply act in a way of integrity. And my big passion, one of the reasons I wrote that book, was to help us restore our system of government and restore respect for our system of government because of the way that we serve. That means you're not afraid of the tough issues. You can speak out the truth, but you can do so in love. That's the challenge in our leadership. There's a lot of people that will just do all love and no truth. They're called Democratic Party. And there's a lot of people that push all truth and no love. And our challenge is to actually do both of those. And I think that that's something I'm uniquely qualified and called to do as the next governor, and I believe we're going to do a good job making Michigan great again.
Thank you. Mr. Tater, again, your 2 top priorities if you become governor on January 1st, 2019.
Well, he stole my thunder, eliminating the taxes, not only the income tax, but the tax on retirees and the gasoline tax. I think the state of Michigan has plenty of money. They need to learn to live within their budget. And if it requires cutting back the size of Lansing, which is huge, then it requires cutting back the size of Lansing. And that's what has to be done. We have to make government more accessible to us so we can get our points of view seen and heard, and we have to make their government or that part in Lansing small enough that they can control and do the jobs that they're required to do, but not everything else that they're trying to do.
Thank you. I think I've used up all the cards I have. There's some specific questions about stopping refugees coming to Michigan and things of that nature. I'm sure the gentleman can answer that on a one-to-one. I think we're kind of at the end. So if I could have, in reverse order, Mr. Tater, if you want to give your closing statement, you may, sir.
Once again, I think because of my background, because of the different facets of areas of expertise that I've had over my lifetime, which was in the process of teaching and military, I have the ability to work with people. I have the ability to be patient. Obviously, 31 years as a teacher made me that way. And the ability to talk with soldiers and make soldiers work and do things in a certain way. Also, because I had the construction background, I actually had financing because I had to finance the houses that I was building for sale, and they had to fit within a particular budget. So I'm aware of the facets of what the governor has to do in the state of Michigan, and I think I'm the best candidate for that position.
Thank you very much, everybody. My friends, we're on the verge of something very special. When I started out on this race to be governor, they didn't think we had a chance. They said, you're never going to be able to raise money because I'm not a friend of the special interests up in Lansing. But I'm telling you, we're right now neck and neck with Bill Schuette. You're not going to hear it in the press. We have our own data that says that that's going to happen, guys. And I'm telling you, it's going to be a long night on August 7th. You guys can make it a shorter night by telling more and more of your friends. But we have the best ground game in history in the state of Michigan. I've got over 3,000 volunteers. I would submit that most of them are hyperactive volunteers wearing their buttons everywhere across the state. We blow away all the other teams on yard signs. But, you know, we actually got on the ballot without having to pay anybody to get on the ballot. All volunteer mojo. That is something that's never been done. So, guys, if you want to be part of something special, it's about time that we return the voice of the people to the halls of Lansing. And if you elect me as governor, I'll make sure that I serve you with honor, with integrity, and we're going to make Michigan a very special place, not just for Michigan, but for the whole country. Thank you, everybody.
I'd like to have everybody give them a nice round of applause.
Good job. Good job, both of you. It's a real honor to have these people here. It's too bad Dr. Hines didn't make it, so he missed a good one, didn't he? Okay, normally, as you see, if you're looking at our agenda, thank you both, when other representatives have either they're here or their representatives are here, we'd like to give them a few minutes to talk, to say what's going on special in their area in Congress. We have Don Brown here, who happens to be Paul Mitchell's special representative. I'd like you to welcome him up here, and he's going to talk for a couple minutes and tell you what's going on with Mr. Mitchell.
Thank you. Thank you to the Tea Party for hosting another good event. I mean, what opportunities do you have to hear the candidates face to face and give you the opportunity to answer questions one-on-one? It's really we're really lucky to have this organization around, because without it, I mean, our country would be like many organizations like this across the country. It's really helped get the country back on track and pay attention. And Congressman Mitchell is ending his first term in Congress. He was in private business his whole life, and after he retired, he was trying to find a way to try to make a difference, to use his experience to help the rest of the country. And he got involved, and he's working hard in Washington for us, and he lives here in Dryden. And recently, he just brought the chairman from Texas, Mac Thornberry, who's the chairman of the Armed Services Committee, to Michigan, to look at southeast Michigan, to see the defense sector, see Selfridge, TACOM and TARDAC down in Warren, and General Dynamics and many of the local contractors that employ thousands of people in southeast Michigan and prepared for the country's defense. And there's a lot often you hear from time to time that Selfridge is going to be on a brack and potentially be closed because members of Congress don't understand the importance of Selfridge to our national defense and obviously the importance of the Midwest and here in Michigan. And so Congressman Mitchell brought that chairman out here to see firsthand. He was very impressed. It's the first time the chairman for the House Armed Services has been to Michigan in over 50 years. And Congressman Mitchell, had some stature with him. He was just appointed to the House Armed Services Committee 2 months ago. And Congressman Miller, who was represented this area for many years, was on the Armed Services Committee initially when she first served, but she was moved off of that committee. And Congressman Mitchell now serves on there, as well as serves on the Transportation and Infrastructure Committee. Those are 2 A committees, and that's very unique for any freshman across the country to have 2 A committees serve on there, and Congressman Mitchell does. Congressman Mitchell also is on the House Leadership Committee. He meets weekly with the House Leadership team, the chairs of the major committees, the Speaker, and other ones plotting a policy for the Congress as they go forward. Congressman Mitchell has been very active in our district, bringing money. Just recently, they appropriated money for a major road down on Mound Road. I don't know if you work down in southeast Michigan, but Mound Road is an industrial corridor and certainly the home of many high technology developments, auto industry, defense, all around. And $98 million was appropriated to come to Michigan, to southeast Michigan, to help improve that road and rebuild that road and make that road state-of-the-art for automated vehicles and other things for the future. That is the highest amount of money ever appropriated to a single road in the country. The highest amount. And Congressman Mitchell, our congressman, because he's been up in Washington working and putting his nose to the grindstone and being involved and earning the respect of his peers, helped. And how did that help? How did it get that way a little bit? Well, some of you may have went to the Trump rally. President Trump came to southeast Michigan, came to Washington Township down in Macomb County. Paul Mitchell rode on the plane with him from Washington out here to Selfridge where they landed. He also spent time with him in the limousine on the motorcade out. So he had a lot of quality time with the president. And he pressed Michigan issues. He pressed Macomb County issues. He pressed the importance for agriculture. He pressed the needs to make sure that our southeast Michigan defense corridor is protected. Talked about Mound Road and the needs for that important corridor to be maintained to provide the support that our manufacturing base needs here in southeast Michigan, which Michigan, by the way, is the center of manufacturing in the whole country. And without manufacturing, our nation's ability to defend itself is very much in jeopardy. He also talked about the Sioux Locks with the president. importance of rebuilding the Sioux locks and add that second bigger lock so that if, God forbid, a terrorist act or some other disaster would happen, would throw our nation in a recession and certainly maybe even a depression here in Michigan. And all those things were accomplished recently in the budget, and that money now is going to the Sioux locks. Mound Road is funded. Chairman of the House Armed Services came out to visit Selfridge and is taking a look around and is getting notice. All these things are happening from a freshman congressman who started out just 2 years ago brand new because he wanted to go to Washington and make a difference. And he's up for election again, and I hope that he's earned your support. We've brought some signs out in front when you come out. I encourage you to take one and place one in your yard or your business. And we look forward to continuing to work for all of you. But I'll answer questions for you after. In the interest of time, I'll cut it short. But I'll be available afterwards if anyone asks any particular questions. And thank you all for participating and being active. I mean, this Tea Party movement started many years ago and was a catalyst of change, and it still holds true today. And active and knowledgeable publics are better than one that isn't. So appreciate you all, and I'll see you all around. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, we just got a couple more that have something to say, representatives that are running for office. I'm only going to talk for a minute or two, but I just want to introduce them. This is Brandon Miller.
Hello, Brendan Miller. I'm running for County Commission, District 1. That's Rich Township, Deerfield Township, and Marathon Township, which includes the villages of Otter Lake and Columbiaville. I'm running as a Republican, but that doesn't mean I'm not looking for everybody else's support. I'm running against a 30-year incumbent who's been there for 30 years, been throughout there for a long time, and I think I can do it. I want to bring change to the county. I think it's about time we have someone new, some different ideas, look at some different options in the county, and examine maybe some different practices. One thing I brought up, for instance, is the fact that we have our county commission meetings at 9 a.m., which has been shown study after study that it's worse to do your meetings before 10 a.m. than it is to do it after 9 p.m. So that's just one small change I think we can make. And it's a small compromising change, but at the very least we can say that we made a change in order to get more people involved. I also can say that they're right about the energy companies. Personally, I found out, I'm now a target of the energy companies, unfortunately. I found out that a field representative for DTE has gone around telling some farmers that I am against them because, one, I'm not a huge fan of the wind work up in North Branch, and two, I'm supporting Gary Glenn, which doesn't really matter, but to them it's a big deal. So if you guys ever hear that, please let me know. Know that I have a family who has farmed for a very long time, and they're just trying to spread rumors to make everybody think that I'm some big old bad guy. So if you're willing to help and support my campaign, I'd really appreciate it. Brendan Miller, County Commission, District 1, Marathon, Rich, and Deerfield Townships, trying to bring change and bring unity back to the county level. Thank you.
Okay, and finally, I'd like to introduce Judge Scott. Judge is running again for probate judge. Thank you. Welcome, Judge Scott, please.
You got to get out of that sunlight or you can't see. But my name is Justice Scott. I'm your probate family court judge. I've been working for you for 39 years. I started out in the prosecutor's office in 1979. I was hired in at the lowest level, and I worked my way up. I decided I was going to be the prosecutor, and I was going to do that by working hard, being honest with people, and listening to them, really listening and trying to help them. And that's what I set out to do every day. In 1983, I became the chief assistant prosecutor. In 1992, I became the elected prosecutor. So I worked there for 21 years. As the elected prosecutor, I was your attorney, and I felt it was my job. You elected me, that I was to do the toughest cases. So that's what I did. I tried the murder cases, the breaking and enterings, the armed robberies. I tried every kind of case you can possibly try in the prosecutor's office, and I was very successful. After I felt I was ready, I decided to run for probate court judge in 2000. Judge Preisel couldn't run again because he's term limited out. I won that race, 63% of the vote. I've run unopposed twice. So at this point, guy who's in the prosecutor's office for a year, who made a commitment to be your prosecutor, after being there a year decided he'd rather be the probate judge, and he filed against me. So that's your choice. The way I look at it, it's kind of like heart surgery. Who do you want to handle the most important things in your life? Your children, your marriage, your property. The guy has been working for you with a proven track record for 39 years, who has trials every day and is virtually an expert in what I do after 17 and a half years. Or this guy who made a commitment to you, who now wants to run for probate judge after being in the prosecutor's office for a year. I'm asking for your support, my reelection. I want to continue working hard for you, continue to listen, treat everybody with respect and integrity. Thank you. Any questions?
Okay. Jack, I'm not, I gave it back, so let's do the Tea Party. Okay, precinct delegates. These are, I don't know if you know who these people are, but they are the ones that really elect your representatives, okay? And this gentleman here is running for precinct delegate, and I thought I'd let him tell you about it.
I am Maurice Freed. I live in Vista del Sol in District Number 2. I am retired. I was in government in Oakland County for 12 years. I own my own business for various businesses privately for some 30 years. I have a law degree. I had a real estate license. I'm presently carrying a private investigator's license. That's the last one I retained. But I've been involved with local issues. I think if you've read the newspaper, Justice Scott will tell you that I've been involved, interested. It revitalized my interest, so I decided to come back and help support the Republican Party. We need a lot of support in this upcoming election, as we've seen. So if you're in Mayfield Township, District Number 2, I'm running as a precinct delegate, and I appreciate your vote. Thank you.
Are you running? Are you running for a precinct delegate? You got 1 minute.
1 minute. My name's Neil Pikars. It's Piekasz if you're Polish. Does anybody live in Attica Township, Precinct 2? Show of hands. All right, I talked to you. I met you folks. I got 2 votes there. And Bill Gavette here, we're running together. His name's first, mine's third, so it's vote for no more than 4. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm in. I was a precinct delegate in Macomb County, and I would like to talk to the gentleman there who is in Oakland and ask him what happened. Oakland went blue last year. Macomb went red. So it's very important to be a precinct delegate and get involved. Spread the word. It's a war out there. It's a war. I loved your presentation. Thank you.
Okay. Just so you know, we have quite a few precinct delegates here, too. Carol is one also running for Mayfield in Mayfield Township. Precinct 3. Okay. Anybody else? Okay. What precinct is that? Oh, you got a rack there.
We have 72 miles of road. We didn't put a millage in. We tile the roads, and that's what saves them. And what everybody else is paying $7 a yard for gravel, we pay $3.50 because we lease the county's bid out, bring our own contractor in and process the gravel.
Good job. Okay. Okay. Yes, ma'am. Go ahead.
They identify the party of the precinct delegates on the ballot?
Do they? Yes, they do. I'm running also. Okay. But last time I made that statement, I asked anybody live in Elba? Nobody lived in Elba. I did me no good at all. Yeah, they were moving. Okay. We're going to ask Carol to come back up and do a summary again of what's coming up. and the closing prayer.
Well, our next business meeting is August 9th, and it's at the Sportsman's Club out on Lake George Road. Everybody's invited to that. It's at 7 p.m. Our next general meeting or monthly meeting is August 21st, right here, Mayfield Township Hall at 7 o'clock. Y'all come back. And thanks for coming out tonight. What a great bunch of people. Real glad to see the attendance. Thanks for coming. If you'd stand with me for the closing prayer, please. Lord, our liberty was a gift from you that we gratefully acknowledge and thank you for. I ask for traveling mercies and guide us safely home. In Jesus' name, amen.
Okay, that's a wrap, folks.